Cool. All right. So today I really wanted to talk about comping, hey Juan, because that is something that I am seeing happen, or people tend to be overpricing properties a lot. And when I say overpricing, what they're doing is that they're assuming that it's going to be worth more than it is, or they're believing the seller's hype, where a seller is saying my property is worth more because of X, Y, and Z. And so I want to address that because it's very challenging when we're trying to get, we want to get deals, but at the same time, we want to get deals that are sellable. And the biggest challenge that I'm seeing a lot of people having right now in our community, not only in my group and not only in my community and all across let's just call it within our profession. And I'm not going to go off my high horse, but it's really important that you recognize what you're doing as a profession, not just, I'm a wholesaler or I'm an investor, just treat it as a profession so that we can elevate the game, so that we can elevate your brand, so that we can elevate our profession and our image. Okay. So what I'm seeing is that a lot of people within our profession are going into deals and they're accepting deals and they're going under contract much higher than they should because they're not negotiating strong enough with the sellers. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the objections, and then I'll go into a little bit about comping, just a refresher so that everybody needs to comp. Now, a refresher on how to comp. Now, before I do that, though, I want to preface everything that I'm sharing with this. You don't want to spend the majority of your time comping properties or comping deals. So, and I had this conversation yesterday with Nikita. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you're comping properties after you have someone that is interested in your offer. In other words, I'm not going to comp something first, then call a seller, then call an agent and try to see if my numbers work or if I can make a deal out of it. I will only comp something after I've spoken to a seller, after I've spoken to an agent, after I've spoken to a JV partner, whoever that might be, after I've spoken to someone first and I've identified a possible opportunity. If there isn't an opportunity there and I don't really see an opportunity there, then I'm not going to start comping things. And because here's what's happened. My personal experience has been that when I'm going out there and I'm comping deals or I'm comping properties or I'm comping opportunities, I can comp them pretty quick. I can comp them in about 5 to 10 minutes. Okay. Sometimes I'll get really difficult ones. It'll take me 15 to 20 minutes to comp. But let's just say I comp something in about 5 minutes. And if I do that, for 20 or 30 different deals a day, that starts to add up. Now, for some people, especially when they're brand new, to comp something, it could take them 20 minutes. It could take them 30 minutes. It can take them even up to an hour to comp something. And so when they're comping every deal that they get or every deal that crosses their path, then you've lost 3, 4, 5 hours just because you're analyzing every opportunity. So what I don't want to happen is I don't want people to fall into the trap of, well, let me comp it first. Let me see if it's an opportunity. And if it is an opportunity, then I will make that phone call. Then I will get up the courage to call that agent. I will get the courage to call that seller. And here's another thing that happens. As you get better at this, you will discover that as you're comping these deals out, you'll comp them and then you'll call the agent or you'll call the seller, and then you'll hear, well, that deal's already gone, or that property's already sold, or we just accepted an offer. So it's it's not a good feeling to have found out that you just spent 30 minutes to an hour analyzing a deal, running all the numbers, doing all these calculations, looking for comps, doing all this work for an hour to then call up an agent or call up a seller who then says to you, oh, the deal's gone, I've already sold it. So it's counterproductive. And so I want us to get in the habit of not comping until we know that we have an opportunity, until we've actually spoken to someone and there's something there. The seller still wants to sell. The agent says the property is still available and they're interested in hearing what you have to offer. Then you're going to go out there and then you're going to comp it. So anyway, I want to make sure that everybody's on the same page with that, and that everybody is aware of that. Now, we're also live on Facebook, so I'm just checking comments. So if you see me tilt my head, it's only because I'm looking at another screen. And I'm also checking the chats here to see what anybody is saying. Okay, great, fantastic. So I think I've already covered why you want to talk to someone first. Pick up the phone and speak to them first, or message them or text them first. Make sure it's still available. Make sure they still want to sell before you start comping. All right, now that's the first thing. Second thing is and making sure that we know our numbers, right? So let's go over some of the strategies, and I'm probably just going to share my notepad, because I think it's easier that way. So let's go share screen. Share screen one, share. All right, cool. So let's go over the basics of comping, okay? Basics. And let me zoom in on this so that you guys can see it. Okay, number one, date. Date is very, very important when you are comping properties and you're looking at an opportunity. You really want to try to get within 14 days of the most recent sale. So when you're comping something and you're working on it, if there aren't any sales in the last 14 days of when you're looking at that area, then you're probably, there's not a lot of activity. So there's some cause for concern. After that, you want to go 30 days. After that, you want to go 90 days, and after that you want to go 6 months. You do not ever go beyond 6 months to look for comps. That is another thing that I've seen new people do. What they will do is they will use comps that are a year old, and you can't do that. Here's why. When an investor purchases a property, their primary goal is one of two things. They're either going to buy and hold, or they're going to buy, fix, and flip. Now, if they're going to buy, fix, and flip, then what's going to happen is when they resell the property, the appraiser is going to have to appraise that property in order for the buyer who's going to buy their property. The appraiser is going to appraise that property, and they will not use comparables more than 6 months old. So if you're using these comparables that are more than 6 months old, what is happening is you are giving the wrong value to the investors, and they're going to do their research themselves, and they're going to see that you're using comps that are over a year old, that have sold over a year old, and you don't want to do that. So you only want comps. The best ones are always going to be the ones within 14 days. Then it's going to be 30 days, and then it'll be 90 days. Right? 6 months is probably your last resort, your very last resort. A lot of things can change within a 6-month period, including interest rates, right? Interest rates can go up and interest rates can go down. And so if they go up, that does affect values, and typically it's going to drive the prices down. So you want to make sure that you try to keep them within this time frame. Within 14 to 90 days are always the best comps. Now, after that time frame, the next one is proximity. Proximity always wins, okay? There's time, and then there's proximity. You want to try to keep it within a quarter mile. Within a quarter mile radius. That is always the best comps to use, are the ones within a quarter mile radius. Now, I've gone over some rules before, but I think they're worth repeating. You do not cross freeways or natural boundaries. Okay, you don't cross freeways or natural boundaries. This is also very important. So if you have a house and there's a canal that separates the house from one of the comparables that's on the other end of the canal, unfortunately, you're not going to want to use that one across the canal as a comparable. Okay, you don't want to do that. Or a freeway. You don't want to use a comp over a freeway. Now, in some rare cases, it's okay to use them when there aren't very many comparables available. But if there aren't very many comparables available, then I go back to what I said earlier, that is cause for concern, because then what it does is if there's not many sales, that means there's not a lot of investors working in that area. And if there's not a lot of investors working in that area, then what tends to happen is you're going to have a difficult time selling the property, right? You're going to have a difficult time finding your end buyer. So keep that in mind. So you don't cross freeways, you don't cross natural boundaries, lakes, mountains, streams, rivers. You don't cross those things to find your comparables unless you absolutely have to. And even then, I'm going to suggest that you don't, or you're going to probably want to throw that fish back because, lack of sales. All right. So date, very, very important. You want to keep it within the last 14 days. Proximity, you want to try to do it within a quarter-mile radius. You can go as far as 1 mile. 1 mile. It cannot exceed 1 mile when you are looking for comparables. This is another thing that I see people do, is that they will try to support a value for a property, and not only wholesalers and investors, but you've got sellers. Sellers will do this too. Sometimes sellers will say, well, no, I saw a property that sold, and then they'll give you an address, and then you'll look at it and you'll realize that the property was over 1 mile away, right? Why would they do that? I have no idea, but it cannot go more than 1 mile. So 1/4 mile radius is the best. 1 mile radius is your maximum. If it is in a gated community, this is also very important. If it's in a gated community, you want to try to stay within that gated community. Okay, stay within gated communities. So if it's a gated community, you want to try to pick sales that were within that gated community. Those are always going to be the best best comparables. Gated communities, planned urban developments, they're called PUDs. You stay within those communities. Now, if there aren't enough sales within that communities within the last 6 months within that community, I go back to what I said earlier, then there's cause for concern, because what that means is there isn't enough activity in that area in order to support that sale. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Now, after proximity, then the third most important thing is the square footage. And for square footage, you can go 20% up or 20% variance. So that's 20% up and 20% down. So what that means is that if I am comparing a house that is 1,000 square feet, okay, a house that's 1,000 square feet, I can only go 200 square feet up and I can go 200 square feet down. So I should be comparing a house that is 800 square feet to 1,000 square foot home, or a house that is 1,200 square feet to 1,000 square foot home. I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to write down that example so that everybody has it. So example is, for 1,000 square foot home, I can compare that home to an 800 to 1,200 square foot home. That's typically how it works, and that's how appraisers are going to be supporting their values as well. So 1,000 square foot home, you can go 20% up and 20% down. Now, a lot of times people are going to be like, well, what about bedroom and bathroom count? Doesn't that matter? It does matter to a certain degree, but what's most important is your square footage. So you can't compare a 1,000 square foot home to a 1,500 square foot home. This is another thing that I see wholesalers do, investors do, and sellers. Again, sellers will tell you, well, my neighbor across the street sold a property, and they'll give you an address, and you'll find out that their house is like 2,000 square feet and their house is only 1,200. You can't compare those two, right? It doesn't work that way. That's not how appraisers work. And again, everything that we do is determined or affects how an investor is going to be reselling their property to their end buyer, because the investor might be paying cash, may not need an appraisal, but when the investor goes back and tries to resell the property, that property is going to be subject to appraisal standards. So the buyer that's going to be buying their property, and here in this case, I'm talking about what the investor is going to go through, but let's just say you're the person that's buying the property. Let's say that you are the investor, and everyone that I talk to, my goal is to help you become that investor so that you can do the exact same thing, so that you graduate from wholesaler to actual investor where you're fixing and flipping your properties. So when you do this, you're going to buy it, but when you try to resell it, you're going to be subject to appraisal standards, which means that that buyer is going to have to be able to get a loan, and they're going to get an appraisal on your property, on your flip, that is going to be subject to these same standards. Anyway, going back to what I was saying, that's what we're going to follow. So we're going to follow these three primary rules when it comes to comping. You want the date as close as possible, as most recent as possible. You want the proximity as close as possible to the house, within a quarter mile. And the square footage, you want it to not exceed 20% variance of the square footage of the home. Now, last thing, when it comes to bedroom and bathroom count. Okay, so you may have a house that is a two-bedroom, as an example, one bathroom house, and you see that it's again 1,000 square feet. So if it's 1,000 square feet, and then you find a three-bedroom, two-bath that is also 1,000 square feet. And you see that it is a comparable, and you see that it just recently sold. So you say to yourself, okay, so how do I compare this two-bed, one-bath, 1,000 square foot home? How do I compare this to a three-bed, two-bath, 1,000 square foot home? Paul says that the square footage is they're within each other. So how do I make these adjustments? Well, typically, to make these adjustments, you're going to make a $25K bedroom adjustment, and you're going to make a $15K bathroom adjustment. All right. So what that means is that if I want to use this property, this three-bedroom, two-bath house, let's say that three-bedroom, two-bathroom house sold for $200,000. Okay, I'm just throwing out rough numbers. $200,000, and I want to say, and I want to compare it to my two-bedroom, 1,000 square foot home. Square footage is the same. The only thing that I need to adjust for is the bed and the bath. Well, if this one sold for $200,000, I would deduct $25K for the extra bedroom and $15K for the extra bathroom. So that means that this house would probably be worth $160,000, roughly, by me making my adjustments. So I can still compare houses. Now, you shouldn't be going more than one or two bedrooms over, okay? So you can't compare like a six-bedroom to a two-bedroom. It's not gonna work the same, and the square footage is probably not gonna be the same anyway. But in the event that you have two homes that have very similar square footage, almost identical square footages, and the only thing that is different between the two is the bedroom and bathroom count, you can adjust $25K for every extra bedroom that they have and $15K for every extra bathroom that they have. And those are typical appraisal standards. So if I have a seller that says to me, well, my neighbor across the street, and they give me the address, just sold their house for $200,000, right? For $200,000, I want $200,000 as well, and theirs is only a two-bedroom, one-bathroom home, same square footage. I'm going to have a conversation with that seller where I'm going to say something like, well, listen, I appreciate what you're saying, Mr. or Mrs. Seller. However, the property that sold across the street from you, that was a three-bed, two-bath, and yours is a two-bedroom, one-bath. So, I mean, yes, it sold for $200,000, but you tell me, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, how much value would you give for that extra bedroom and that extra bathroom? And then you wait and you see what they say. So I don't like to beat people down with facts and numbers. What I usually do is I just put it back on their lap. So I'll tell them, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, that house was, it has an extra bedroom and an extra bathroom, and it sold for $200,000. Yours doesn't have that extra bedroom or that extra bath. So how would you adjust the value to compensate for that? Or how much value would you give having an extra bedroom or an extra bath? And then I wait and see what they say. So that's typically how I handle that conversation when I'm talking to sellers and we're trying to make adjustments for the values. All right. So I hope that helps everybody when it comes to understanding how to comp. These are the basics, and even on the basics, I'm still seeing some people that deviate from that as well. So just make sure that you keep these numbers in mind. I'm recording this. I'm going to put it onto all of our platforms so that everybody has access to it. Does anybody have any questions about what it is that we just covered? I'm going to stop my screen share, and I'm looking at the chat. Okay. So does this work for multifamily as well, or is comping for multifamily differ? Okay, great question. So let's talk about that. Juan, good question. 5. So for multifamily, okay, when it's 1 to 4 units, you can only compare apples to apples. So if it's a duplex, you can only compare it to other duplexes. You can't compare a duplex to a triplex. You can't compare a duplex to a fourplex or a quadruplex, whatever you'd like to call it. So for multifamily, 1 to 4 units, you can only compare apples to apples. And you never, ever compare a multifamily to a single family residence, ever. Ever, 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 ever. Now, some sellers, what they will do is they will convert their property into 2 units. For instance, we're working on a deal in Brunswick, North Carolina, where the owner, it's a single family residence, and the owner, it's a split level, and the owner has divided the house up into 2. There's only 1 meter, but there's one 2-bedroom, 1 bath on top with a kitchen, and then there's another 1-bedroom, 1 bath on the bottom, and then they even have a basement conversion that they've converted into a living area as well. And so when we first looked it up on county records, it came up as a single family residence, and he tells us, yeah, it is a single family, I just converted it to 3 units. So in that case, it's legally a single family residence. You're not going to compare it to a 3 unit. You can't do it. You can only compare it to what it really is. And anytime it's multifamily units, 1 to 4 units, you only can compare the same, excuse me, it should be 2 to 4 units, not 1 to 4, sorry. 2 to 4 units, you can only compare the number of units versus the same number of units. You can't compare anything else. Now, when we're talking 5 units or more, that's a whole nother ball game. That's commercial, and that's where you start to get into cap rates and analyzing rent rolls and all that stuff. And we're not going to go into that today because that's like higher level stuff. And most of us, when we're just getting started, what we're doing is we're actually wholesaling and investing in single family residences or 2 to 4 units, okay? But eventually, if you graduate to 5 units or more, then we can have classes on that or conversations on that. So yeah, that's multifamily. Now, for proximity, is 1/4 mile a new criteria? I was always heard a half a mile. Okay, so yes, Yolanda, that's a great point. You can go between 1/4 all the way up to a mile. You can, but 1/4 mile, in my opinion, is probably going to give you the best comparables because it's in the same neighborhood. The thing is, if you go within a half a mile, in some cases, even just across the street on the other block, for people that don't know, I grew up in a part of Los Angeles. It was the Northeast Los Angeles area called Highland Park, and it shares a zip code. It doesn't share a zip code, but it's borderline Glassell Park, and it's borderline Eagle Rock, and literally I could just go from one block to the next, and I could be in each other's new neighborhoods or zip codes where the values would change drastically. Maybe not so much today, but at least back in the 80s or the 90s. And so that's the reason that I say try to keep it within a 1/4 mile, because neighborhoods can change drastically. And in Beverly Hills and Los Angeles, there's Beverly Hills and there's Beverly Glen. And Beverly Hills is its own independent city, and Beverly Glen is right up next to it. And you cross the street, all of a sudden you're in Beverly Hills. But Beverly Glen is considered Los Angeles, and it's a different price point. So just try to keep the comps as close as possible. Hopefully that helps. Any other questions on what it is that we were talking about? Okay. So hopefully this comping helped everybody out. I'm going to stop the share, and then I'm going to talk about submitting offers real quick for the next 5 minutes, and then we'll cut it short. These calls should only last about 30 minutes, but here's what I want to talk to everybody about. We want to get in the habit of submitting as many offers as possible. The only way to submit offers is to have conversations. So the foundation of what we do is to have conversations with people on a regular basis. We have to be talking to sellers. We have to be talking to agents. We have to be talking to JV partners, okay? Those are the 3 types of people that we're going to be speaking to. So we're talking to real estate agents that have properties that they're representing to sell, sellers that want to sell their property, and JV partners that have contracts that they want to sell that you could potentially bring buyers to. Yes, exactly. So Juan just made a comment. After we know that they want to sell, we can send them a letter of intent. So Number one, foundation is conversations with people. Once we have conversations with people and we've identified opportunities, the next thing that we do is we send them an offer. In our case, I've talked about this before, but you want to send, I have a one-page letter of intent that we give out to people that you can use. It's a simple one-page offer. And that's the misconception, is that people think that you have to send out these, 10-page offers with all these terms. And that's not necessary when you're just opening up the conversation, right? You're just sending a letter of intent that outlines the terms of what it is that you're offering. It shouldn't take you any more than 2 to 3 minutes to replace the agent's name or the seller's name or the price, the timeline, and that's about it. Almost all of the other terms are going to remain the same. So if you don't have this template for the letter of intent that we use, let me know and I'll give it to you guys as a Google Doc so that you could use it. You just change whoever's name is on there, the purchase price, some of the terms, and you send it out as a PDF. You want to be sending out as many of these as you can every single day. The more offers that you send out, the more likely that you are going to get properties under contract. Now, what prices should you be sending these offers out, right? Well, I'm going to tell you right now that I want you to start sending these properties out roughly about 55 to 60% of whatever the ARV is. So whatever the ARV is, send it about 55 to 60% off of that. Just flat off, just discount it, just cut it down and then send the offer out. And I know that for a lot of people that does get a little frightening, because they're like, well, I don't want to offend the seller, I don't want to offend the agent, I don't want to get yelled at, I don't want to I don't want to come in too low. And here's the reality of this. You're just initiating conversation, you're sending out these offers, you don't know what they're going to say. They may come back and they may counter you, or in fact, they may say no. And if that offer is too low, then no big deal. You can always adjust it. I just want everyone used to sending out as many offers as possible. You have to get comfortable with that. That is what this business is. That's what we do. Okay. And so you have to understand that professional athletes make millions and millions of dollars, and they are missing, they are striking out, they are not catching the ball at least 70 to 80% of the time. So 70 to 80% of the time, they are striking out, missing the ball, not making the shot, and yet they're still making millions of dollars, okay? Because they have accepted the reality of the fact that they're going to have to shoot as many times as possible. They're going to have to hit the ball as many times as possible. They're going to have to throw the football as many times as possible. They're going to have to swing as many times as possible. They're going to have to throw as many punches as possible. If you're a boxer, if you're a boxing fan, right? You know the stats. They'll throw 400 punches, 300 punches if they're good, and then they may only land about 30 to 40 of them, or about 50 to 60 of the punches. These are the numbers. And so our business is no different. You just have to get out of this mindset of being afraid or worried about what they're going to think because you may send an offer that they don't like. All you're doing is making an offer. You're not insulting them personally. You're not insulting their family. You're not insulting their, anything personal about them. You're just making an offer on the property. They don't necessarily have to accept it. So you just have to get good at it and get comfortable submitting as many offers as possible. Now, we have a system where we teach people how to send out these offers, right? And we call it the deal bazooka, but it's a simple setup. It's a mail merge. You use your Gmail. You can send out between 150 up to 300 offers a day. Now, if you think about that, just do the math on that. This is how crazy this is. If you send out 300 offers a day, 300, okay? 300 times, let's say you only do it Monday through Friday. That's 20 days a week. That's 6,000 offers a month that you've sent out. Nationwide, by the way. I'm talking nationwide. 6,000 offers. Let's say you only get 10% of those that actually reply. That's 60 that reply. 60. And out of those 60, let's say another 10% of those actually convert into a contract. You're now at 6 contracts. And let's say that out of those 6 contracts, 50% of them fail. You're now at 3 contracts. And if the average wholesale deal is $7,500 per wholesale transaction times 3, you're looking at about $22,000 a month. That's it. Okay. And what you're going to need is you will need something like PropStream. You will need a mail merge software, and we can teach you how to do it, and we teach you how to sell it and set it up. So we have like a course and a setup where we set it up for you. It's one time. It's $499, and that's how you can start using that stuff too. It's in school. It's under the Deal Bazooka. So if you need help with that, I'm telling you, once it's set up, you just have to go in there, input the data, or have someone do it for you. You can have an assistant do it for you. You can have one of your I have my son help me do this, and he's 18 years old. Just teach him how to do it, and they send out these offers for you on a regular basis. Okay, so I'm checking the comments. All right. All right. Okay, I appreciate everybody participating. Every Wednesday, we are here, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern, for 30 minutes. We went over a little bit today because I started a little bit behind, and we're going to be covering all of that stuff. If you have questions or you need help with stuff, this is a great time for you to bring it to these meetings. If you have something that's really hot, that's where you pick up the phone and you give me a call. All right? Okay, everybody. Have a great day. Let's get to work.